The first few days with Scylla were awkward, to say the least. Captain Aidan Cross quickly realized just how difficult his new task would be. Scylla, though not unfriendly, seemed almost terrified of everything. It wasn't just the spaceship's technology or the alien foods, though those certainly confused her. It was the way she held herself, constantly looking over her shoulder, as if afraid of doing something wrong. The language barrier was the first issue. While she could understand basic human speech, she had trouble speaking it clearly. Simple phrases like hello or thank you came out wrong. When Aidan offered her a cup of human tea, she stared at it with wide eyes, not sure how to handle the strange container. Scylla, it's just tea, Aidan said gently, trying to offer a friendly smile. You can drink it, no problem. Scylla's large purple eyes flicked nervously from the cup to Aidan's face. I don't know. It might be different. Aidan scratched his head. It's not that different, really. It's just tea. She hesitated, then carefully reached for the cup. Her fingers brushed against the rim, her hands trembling slightly. The way she handled the tea, as if it might explode at any moment, made Aidan wonder just how different the Zorath culture was from his own. Take it slow, Aidan said, trying to ease the tension. You'll get used to it. After a few moments, Scylla took a small sip, her eyes widening with surprise. It's sweet, she said quietly, almost as if speaking to herself. Aidan couldn't help but chuckle. Yeah, that's how we humans like it. But this was just the start of a series of misunderstandings. Scylla didn't understand many of the things Aidan considered normal. He showed her the common areas of the ship, pointing out the dining hall, the gym, and the command center. But every time he mentioned something, Scylla appeared more and more unsure. One evening, as they sat in the mess hall, Scylla tried to mimic the way Aidan ate. He was enjoying a plate of pasta, but Scylla, clearly uncomfortable, tried using her long, delicate fingers to grab the spaghetti. She struggled, the noodles slipping through her grasp, and her face flushed in embarrassment. You're supposed to use a fork, Aidan said with a kind smile, reaching for his own utensil. He handed her one, hoping she would understand. Scylla stared at the fork for a long time before carefully taking it. She stabbed a piece of pasta, then held the fork up, unsure of what to do next. It was clear she had no experience with human utensils. It's okay, Aidan said, noticing her confusion. Just eat however is comfortable for you. You don't have to follow every rule exactly. But this only seemed to confuse her more. But is it wrong? She asked softly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Aidan frowned, realizing that her species was very different from his own in terms of social structure. The Zorath were a race of perfectionists, with strict rules and rituals governing almost everything they did. There was little room for casualness or deviation. To her, making a mistake meant dishonor, and Aidan understood that now. No, it's not wrong, Aidan said carefully, trying to put her at ease. Here, we do things our way. You don't have to worry about making mistakes. But Scylla's response was only a soft nod, as if she still didn't fully believe him. The cultural differences weren't just about food or manners, though. One morning, Aidan was showing Scylla how to use the ship's exercise equipment. He demonstrated how to use the treadmill, casually walking at a steady pace while she watched, her eyes wide in fascination. When it was her turn, she hesitated, unsure of what to do. She stood next to the treadmill, her hands clenched in front of her. Can I try? She asked, voice shaky. Of course, Aidan said, stepping off the machine. It's simple, really. But when Scylla stepped onto the treadmill, she froze. Her body tensed, her legs stiffened, and she stumbled slightly when the belt began moving. The idea of running in place, in a small space, seemed entirely alien to her. Her species was used to physical agility, but not in this way. Aidan watched with concern as she tried to adjust, clearly uncomfortable. Scylla, relax, Aidan said. It's just exercise. You can take it slow. "I'm trying," she whispered, still standing awkwardly. "I don't understand why it moves like this. How do you control it?" Aiden sighed. It was becoming clear that Scylla wasn't just shy, she was overwhelmed. She wasn't used to human unpredictability. To her, everything needed to be controlled, measured, and understood. And the way humans did things was unpredictable and messy. But Aiden wasn't sure how to help her with that yet. "Well," Aiden said, putting a hand on her shoulder, "maybe we start small. Don't worry about the treadmill for now. Let's go for a walk instead. It's a bit more natural." Scylla nodded gratefully, a faint smile appearing on her face for the first time since their meeting. It was small, but it was progress. Aiden couldn't help but feel a bit relieved. Maybe they were getting somewhere, even if it was slow. The days slowly passed, and Aiden couldn't deny that he was beginning to grow fond of Scylla, despite the constant misunderstandings. She was still reserved, but there were small moments when she'd look up at him with those big purple eyes, and he could see a flicker of trust forming. She was learning, bit by bit, how to adapt to human life. Aiden, in turn, was beginning to understand just how much her species was shaped by their culture and traditions. One morning, something unexpected happened. The Vanguard had just received orders to head toward a nearby sector to deliver medical supplies to a colony that had been struck by an outbreak of disease. Aiden was busy coordinating with the crew when an alert came through. The colony was under attack by a group of space pirates. A distress signal had been sent, but it seemed the pirates were making their move before any backup could arrive. "Captain," Lieutenant Hawk called out, looking over his shoulder, "we need to make a decision now. If we don't intercept them, the colony could be wiped out before reinforcements arrive." Aiden's mind raced. The pirates were ruthless, and this wasn't the first time they had attacked a defenseless colony. He needed to act quickly. His first instinct was to prepare for a counterattack with the ship's weapons, but then he remembered something. Scylla. She might be an outsider, but she knew things Aiden didn't. Her species, the Zoreth, were known for their advanced senses and superior strategic minds. Aiden had never seen it firsthand, but there were rumors about Zoreth intelligence being unlike anything humans had ever encountered. Without wasting another second, Aiden turned to Lieutenant Hawk. "Take the crew and prepare the Vanguard for battle. I'm taking Scylla with me." The lieutenant looked confused for a moment but quickly nodded, understanding that Aiden's decisions were rarely questioned. He quickly turned to the rest of the crew. Aiden found Scylla in her quarters, sitting quietly by the window, watching the stars. When she saw him, she stood up immediately, unsure of what was happening. "Captain," she asked softly, her voice filled with concern. "We're going to need your help," Aiden said. "We're heading into a dangerous situation, and I think you might be able to give us an edge." Scylla's eyes widened. "Me? I don't know what I can do. I've never been in a situation like this." Aiden gave her a reassuring smile. "I believe in you. You've shown me you're capable of more than you realize." Scylla hesitated for a moment but then nodded. She followed him out, her body stiff with nervous energy. They made their way to the command deck, where Aiden explained the situation to the crew. After a few quick adjustments, the Vanguard was on course to intercept the pirate ship. As they neared the colony, the pirate vessel appeared on the radar, a large, menacing ship bristling with weapons. The situation was tense, and Aiden's mind was racing through potential strategies. But when Scylla stepped forward, something in her changed. She looked up at the screens, her eyes narrowing as she studied the pirate ship. "I can sense them," she said quietly, her voice calm yet focused. Aiden turned to her, surprised. "What do you mean, you can sense them?" Scylla pointed at the screen. "The pirates. Their movements. They're predictable. They think they're safe, but they're not." Aiden blinked. He had read about the Zoreth's superior senses, but he hadn't fully understood them until now. Scylla wasn't just seeing the pirates as a threat. She was sensing their intentions, reading their patterns in ways that no human could. "What do you suggest?" Aiden asked, now fully trusting her instincts. Scylla took a deep breath and began to give orders, her voice steady and precise. "We need to intercept their communications. They've been too careless with their plans. They'll think they have the upper hand, but we can use that against them." Without waiting for approval, she worked with the ship's systems, tapping into the pirate vessel's communication signals. The crew watched in stunned silence as she manipulated the interface with ease, pulling up encrypted channels and decrypting their plans. Aiden stood there, amazed. In just a few minutes, Scylla had cracked their communication codes, revealing their attack points and weaknesses. "We can't fight them head-on, but if we use the environment, we can trap them," she said. "There's a narrow asteroid field just ahead. If we lure them in, their ship will be forced to navigate it, and their weapons won't be able to track us." Aiden felt a surge of respect for Scylla. "I didn't know you could do that. You've got more tricks up your sleeve than I thought." Scylla didn't respond directly. Instead, she gave him a small, shy smile. "I've learned a lot from watching you." With Scylla's help, they executed the plan flawlessly. As they lured the pirate ship into the asteroid field, they used its narrow corridors to their advantage, dodging the enemy's fire and sending precise shots at their power systems. The pirates, confused and disoriented, never stood a chance. When the battle was over, the pirate ship was disabled, and the crew of the Vanguard had successfully saved the colony. Aiden looked over at Scylla, who was quietly watching the crew celebrate their victory. "You did great," he said, his voice filled with admiration. Scylla's eyes met his, her expression still shy but now filled with pride. "We did it," she said softly, the words more confident than she had ever spoken before. Aiden smiled. They had won together, and for the first time, he realized that their partnership might be the key to something much greater than either of them had expected. After this successful mission, the atmosphere on the Vanguard was different. The crew was in high spirits, praising the quick thinking and strategic brilliance that had saved the colony. Even Aiden, usually calm and collected, couldn't hide his smile. He was proud of his crew, but today there was someone else who deserved recognition. Scylla. Aiden found himself thinking about their partnership more than he expected. She had been reserved, unsure of herself, but in that moment of danger, she had stepped up in ways he never imagined. The Zorath weren't just some strange, distant species. They were formidable allies. Later that evening, Aiden made his way to the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly in front of him, calm and beautiful. He needed some time to process everything. The ship was quieter now, with most of the crew already off duty, but there was one person still awake, standing by the large window, gazing out into the endless void. Scylla. She turned as Aiden entered, her large purple eyes meeting his. Her usual nervousness was gone, replaced with a quiet strength. There was a calm in her now, something different than the girl who had first boarded the Vanguard. Aiden stepped up beside her, leaning against the window frame. They both stared out into space, the silence between them comfortable, almost peaceful. "You did well today," Aiden said after a moment, breaking the silence. "You were incredible." Scylla's eyes softened, a hint of a smile appearing on her face. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice not as unsure as before. "I wasn't sure I could do it, but I saw the way you handled things. Captain, you always stay calm." Aiden turned his head to look at her. "I've learned to stay calm in tough situations. It's what I do. But today, I didn't do it alone." Scylla looked down at her hands, her fingers nervously twisting together. "I know. I wasn't sure at first if I could be of any help. I've never been in a situation like that before. But when I saw the pirates, I realized something. They were just like puzzles." Aiden raised an eyebrow. "Puzzles?" Scylla nodded. "Yes. My people, we look at things differently. We solve problems by seeing the patterns, the movements, It's second nature to us, and I could feel the pirates' movements, the way they thought. They were too predictable. I'm glad you were there to help us. Without you, it could have turned out very differently, Aiden said with a slight smile. I can't imagine how hard it must have been for you, though. Your first real mission with humans. And it was a fight. Scylla glanced at him, a small laugh escaping her lips. I didn't expect it to be so chaotic. But it's not like I had a choice. I'm glad it worked out. I feel more confident now. Like maybe I really can be useful here. Aiden smiled at her, his respect for her growing even more. You're more than just useful. You're a valuable part of this crew. I didn't know what to expect when I was assigned to work with you, but now I see just how much you bring to the table. I was wrong to doubt you. Scylla looked at him, a little surprised by the words. I didn't know you doubted me. Aiden shook his head quickly. I didn't mean it like that. It's just, when I first met you, you seemed so nervous. I didn't think you'd be able to handle the pressure. But now I see you're not just some alien. You're someone with real strength. We make a good team. Scylla smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. I think so too. I just needed to understand you more. Humans are different from us, but I'm learning. Slowly. You're doing great, Aiden said. And I'm not going anywhere. I'll help you, however you need. We'll figure it out together. For the first time since she had boarded the Vanguard, Scylla felt at ease. She had always struggled with the idea of fitting into human life. Their customs, their way of thinking, it was all so foreign to her. But now, after everything they had been through together, she felt like she was beginning to understand. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time, she felt like she had a place here. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the stars in the distance. It wasn't a grand moment, but it was significant. It was the beginning of something more. I think I'm starting to understand, Scylla said softly, almost to herself. How you humans work together. How you fight for each other. Aiden glanced over at her. We don't always fight, but when we do, we fight for the people we care about. You don't have to be afraid, Scylla. You're one of us now. Scylla smiled, and for the first time, Aiden saw her without hesitation. She was no longer just the alien girl who had been assigned to him. She was a companion, an ally, and maybe, just maybe, a friend. And for the first time in a long while, Aiden felt like he wasn't just the captain of a crew. He was part of something bigger, something that wasn't defined by race or species, but by trust, respect, and the bond that had begun to form between him and Scylla. The future didn't seem so uncertain anymore. Days passed, and things on the Vanguard slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. The crew had accepted Scylla as one of their own, and she, in turn, seemed to grow more comfortable with her new life. She continued to help in ways that Aiden never expected. Her tactical insight had proven invaluable, especially when it came to strategizing in tight situations. However, despite the peaceful exterior, Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was a small nagging sensation in the back of his mind that he couldn't quite place. The mission to the colony had been successful, but there had been something strange about the pirates they had encountered. They had been unusually organized, almost too well prepared for an attack on a helpless colony. Aiden had brushed it off at the time, thinking it was just a coincidence. But now, after several quiet days, the nagging thought returned. He decided to trust his instincts and looked for answers. The first place he went was to the ship's command center. Lieutenant Hawk, Aiden said, as he entered the room, I need a full analysis of the pirate ship we encountered. Something doesn't feel right about that attack. Hawk looked up from the console, his brow furrowed. You're not the only one who thinks so, Captain. I've been looking through the data, and there's something odd about their movements. They acted too quickly, too precisely. It's almost like they knew exactly where we would be. Aiden crossed his arms. Exactly. It doesn't add up. We were on a standard route, and there was no reason for them to be there. We need to dig deeper. Hawk nodded, typing commands into the console. I'm running a deeper scan of their communications and ship activity. It's strange, but there's a pattern here. We might be looking at a bigger problem than just pirates. As the minutes passed, the tension in the room grew. Aiden felt a sinking feeling in his stomach, his instincts confirming his worst fear. The pirates hadn't just attacked a random target. They were hunting for something, and he had a sinking feeling that whatever they were after, it wasn't good for the Vanguard or its crew. After what seemed like hours, Hawk finally spoke. "Captain, I think we found something." Aiden leaned over the console. "What do you have?" Hawk pulled up a series of encrypted files and communication logs. These logs don't make sense at first, but when you analyze the pattern, you see they're all connected to one central point. The pirates weren't just attacking randomly. They were tracking us. Aiden's heart skipped a beat. Tracking us? But how? We've been careful. "I don't know yet," Hawk replied, his voice tense. "But I've identified a signal that was sent out just before the attack. It's a trace, a signal that could only have come from someone on the inside. Someone who knew we were coming." Aiden's blood ran cold. "An inside job. Are you saying there's a traitor on the ship?" Hawk's eyes darkened. "It's possible. We're still analyzing the data, but the pattern is too specific to ignore. Whoever did this is on the Vanguard, Captain." Aiden's mind raced. This was worse than he imagined. If someone on his crew was working with the pirates, they were in more danger than ever before. A traitor could sabotage everything, and Aiden didn't know who to trust anymore. "Alert the crew to be on high alert. We need to start a full investigation. No one can be trusted until we find out who did this," Aiden ordered, his voice firm. Hawk nodded and immediately began sending out the alert. As the crew prepared to tighten security, Aiden's thoughts turned to Scylla. She had proven her loyalty time and time again. She had helped save the colony, and was now becoming an invaluable asset to the Vanguard. But what if she was somehow involved? What if her sudden involvement with the ship had been part of some grander scheme? Aiden quickly dismissed the thought. He knew Scylla. She was as much a victim in all of this as he was. He couldn't believe she would be involved in something as treacherous as this. But then again, trust was in short supply now. He left the command center and headed to Scylla's quarters. He needed to talk to her. He needed to make sure she was okay, especially since she had been so closely involved in their recent victories. When Aiden arrived, he found Scylla sitting by her window again, the same place where they had shared their quiet moments before. She looked up as he entered, and for a moment her eyes flickered with concern. "Captain," Scylla said softly, "is everything all right?" Aiden hesitated. This wasn't going to be easy. "We have a problem, Scylla. The pirates, they weren't just attacking us. They were tracking us, and there's a chance someone on the ship is working with them." Scylla's face paled. "A traitor?" "I don't know yet," Aiden said, shaking his head. "But I need to know that you're not involved in this. I trust you, but we can't be too careful right now." Scylla stood up, her expression hurt. "Captain, you think I'm part of this?" "I don't want to believe it," Aiden replied quickly. "But right now, I can't trust anyone. Not until we find the truth." Scylla's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Aiden saw a spark of fire in her gaze. "I will help you find this traitor, but don't ever doubt my loyalty. I fought for you, for this crew, and I won't let anyone destroy that trust." Aiden looked into her eyes, and for a moment, he saw the same determination in her that he felt in himself. She was right. She was with him, and he couldn't afford to let suspicion tear them apart. He nodded. "Thank you, Scylla. I'm sorry for doubting you. Let's find out who's behind this together." As they turned toward the door, ready to face whatever came next, Aiden knew that this mission was far from over. The real battle was only just beginning. The tension on the Vanguard was unbearable. Aiden could feel it in the air, thick and heavy. The crew was on edge after the discovery that someone aboard might be working with the pirates. Every face seemed suspicious, and every movement seemed calculated. No one was fully trusted. Aiden's decision to start a full investigation was the only thing keeping order, but even that couldn't stop the anxiety from spreading. Everyone was wondering, who could it be? Scylla had taken the news hard. She was trying to stay calm, but Aiden could see the hurt in her eyes every time she looked at him. She had trusted him completely, and now there was a shadow of doubt hanging between them. Aiden hated himself for even thinking about it. Scylla had been nothing but loyal, but the situation had changed. They had to find the traitor before it was too late. Aiden knew they couldn't keep going like this. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. So he turned to Scylla. She was the one who had the most unique abilities among the crew, and her mind worked differently. She was able to see patterns that no one else could, to pick up on things that were invisible to others. She was their best chance. Scylla, Aiden said, meeting her in the hallway, I need you to help me track down the traitor. We need someone with your skills to find the smallest clue, the tiniest mistake. Scylla nodded, her face serious. I understand. I'll do what I can. The two of them spent hours combing through the ship's security logs, cross-referencing communications, and checking every corner for suspicious activity. The ship was large, and it felt like it had thousands of places to hide a secret, but Scylla didn't miss a thing. She had an uncanny ability to focus on what others overlooked. They worked side by side, each new discovery leading them closer to the truth. Hours passed, and exhaustion started to creep in. But then, something caught Scylla's attention. She paused in front of the security feed, her fingers hovering over the controls. Captain, she said quietly, look at this. Aiden walked over and stared at the screen. The feed showed the Vanguard's docking bay. At first, there was nothing unusual. But then, a figure appeared, a man, sneaking toward one of the storage lockers. Aiden recognized him immediately. Lieutenant Grayson, a trusted member of the crew who had been with the Vanguard from the beginning. He had always seemed loyal. But now, there he was, moving around the cargo bay at night, away from his assigned duties. Aiden's heart sank. Grayson was acting suspicious, but it wasn't enough to accuse him. They needed more proof. Is this the first time you've seen him here? Aiden asked. Scylla shook her head. No, I've been noticing strange patterns in his movements. I've seen him leave his quarters at odd hours, always heading toward the storage area. But before, I wasn't sure. Now I am. Aiden's mind raced. We need to confront him, but we can't let him know we're onto him. We need to get him to make a mistake. The next few days passed in tense silence. Aiden and Scylla continued their quiet investigation, following Grayson's every move without his knowledge. They kept him under observation, noting every oddity, every unexplained action. It wasn't long before they discovered more. Coded messages being sent out from his terminal, strange shipments he had ordered, and even unaccounted for supplies being moved to the ship's lower levels. It was enough. Aiden knew they couldn't wait any longer. He called an emergency meeting with the senior officers, his voice firm and calm. Lieutenant Grayson has been working with the pirates. He's been leaking information about our missions and sabotaging our efforts. We've collected enough evidence. Scylla was standing beside him, her expression unreadable. She had seen it all, just as he had. And now, they had the proof they needed. Aiden turned to the rest of the crew, watching their faces. There was a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief. No one had suspected Grayson, and now they were all left wondering who else might be involved. Grayson must be apprehended immediately, Aiden continued. We cannot let him escape, or the pirates will have the advantage. Everyone needs to be on high alert. Scylla, I need you to assist in securing the ship. Make sure there are no surprises. Scylla nodded without hesitation. Her sharp mind and instincts had been invaluable. and Aiden trusted her completely. As she left to carry out her task, Aiden felt the weight of leadership settle heavily on his shoulders. Minutes later, Scylla returned with Grayson in custody. He looked disheveled and panicked, his face pale as he was led into the briefing room. "I don't know what you're talking about," Grayson pleaded, trying to pull free from the guards. "You've got it all wrong. I'm loyal to the Vanguard. I didn't do anything." But his lies were transparent. The evidence was undeniable. Aiden stepped forward, his voice cold. "Enough, Grayson. We know about the communications, the supplies, the sabotage. It's over." Grayson's defiance faded. He dropped his head in defeat. "I never wanted this, but they promised me power. They promised me a place in the New Order. I didn't think they'd go this far." Aiden shook his head in disgust. "You've betrayed everything we stand for. And now you'll face the consequences." With Grayson secured and the traitor exposed, the Vanguard's crew began the long process of regaining trust. The threat had been neutralized, but the damage was done. And though the crew had won this battle, Aiden knew it wasn't the last test they would face. The true challenge lay ahead, rebuilding what had been broken and preparing for the dangers yet to come. And in that moment, standing beside Scylla, Aiden realized that no matter what happened next, he wasn't facing it alone. The Vanguard was still. The usual hum of the ship, the voices of the crew, and the daily hustle had all quieted in the wake of Grayson's betrayal. There was a sense of uneasy calm as the crew tried to pick up the pieces and move forward. The threat of the traitor was gone, but the trust that had been shattered would take longer to repair. The crew was on high alert, more cautious now and more distant. Aiden had spent the last few days in endless meetings and briefings. The investigation was complete, and Grayson was locked away, awaiting his punishment. Aiden knew what had to be done, but it didn't make the task any easier. He had trusted Grayson. The betrayal cut deeper than he had expected. Through it all, there was one person who had been his rock: Scylla. She had stayed by his side through the chaos, helping with the investigation, offering support when it seemed like everything was falling apart. Aiden couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude toward her. She had proven herself time and time again, not just as an ally, but as a friend. Now, as the Vanguard continued its course through the galaxy, Aiden found himself standing in the same place he had stood many times before, the observation deck. The stars stretched out in front of him, the vastness of space offering him a moment of peace. But his thoughts weren't on the stars. They were on Scylla. She had changed. She wasn't the nervous, unsure alien girl who had first boarded the ship. She was strong, capable, and confident. The transformation in her had been remarkable. Aiden admired that strength. The soft click of boots on the floor broke his thoughts. He turned, and there she was, standing in the doorway. Her eyes were still as striking as ever, purple and bright, full of curiosity and wonder. But now, they were full of something else: understanding. "You've been quiet lately," Scylla said, her voice soft. "Are you okay?" Aiden smiled and stepped aside, allowing her to join him at the window. "Just thinking. It's been a rough few days." Scylla nodded, her gaze drifting to the stars. "I can imagine. The crew, they'll recover. But I think it's going to take time. Trust doesn't come back overnight." Aiden sighed. "I know. I didn't expect it to be easy. But sometimes I wonder if I did enough. If I did the right thing." Scylla looked at him, a serious expression on her face. "You did what you had to. It's not easy leading a crew, especially when you don't know who you can trust. But you've shown them you're willing to do what it takes. That's what makes you a leader." Aiden felt a warm feeling spread through him at her words. He had always known that leadership wasn't about being perfect. It was about making the tough decisions, even when they hurt. And Scylla had understood that from the beginning. "I couldn't have done it without you," Aiden said, turning to face her fully. "You've helped me more than you know." Scylla's smile was small, but it held a warmth that made Aiden's heart lighten. "We're a team, Captain. I'm here to help, no matter what. You've shown me what it means to be part of something bigger than myself." Aiden's mind drifted back to the first days after Scylla had joined the Vanguard. She had been so uncertain, so afraid of what the future would bring. Now she was as much a part of the crew as any human on board. Her growth was a reminder of the bond they had formed, and how far they had come. "I think," Aiden said after a pause, "we've come a long way, haven't we? From that first mission with the pirates to now, we've learned a lot." Scylla nodded, her eyes reflecting the stars. "We've learned that humans aren't so different from us after all. We may think differently, we may have different ways of seeing the world, but in the end, we all want the same thing: to survive, to protect those we care about." Aiden looked out at the stars, his thoughts swirling with the challenges that lay ahead. There were always more dangers in space. The universe wasn't kind, and no matter how much they wanted peace, it would always remain out of reach. But that didn't mean they couldn't fight for it, and it didn't mean they were alone. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Aiden asked, turning back to Scylla. She looked at him, her gaze steady and determined. "Always. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." Aiden smiled. He knew that this crew, this ship, wasn't just a team. It was a family. And Scylla, once a stranger to him, was now an integral part of it. "I'm glad you're with us," he said simply. "I'm glad to be here," Scylla replied, her voice full of quiet conviction. And as they stood together, looking out into the endless expanse of space, Aiden knew that the future was uncertain. There would always be more battles to fight, more challenges to face. But with Scylla by his side, and a crew that had proven their loyalty, he felt ready for whatever the universe had in store. Together, they could face anything. The stars stretched out before them, endless and full of possibility. And no matter what lay ahead, Aiden knew one thing for certain: they were stronger together.